He said he didn't come, but he's never permitted to use him there because we already are not having it. So whenever he's coming, we get the both sides, coming, we get the share, he has permission. So he asked if it's better, so I can share with the police and you don't have to, you have to respect, Yeah, I started. I understand that some people have April
Yeah, she doesn't.
I got a whole page, John, and we can get to that in a half an hour. They just moved it to 2:30. The good news so far is they're telling us that the vice president and the president have tested today, and they both tested negative. But a few hours ago, we heard from the communications director, Kate Bedingfield, and she was saying they don't know how long that's going to remain the case. Can you guys go right to the Harris video instead of on camera? So they're telling us the vice president is going to stick to the 10-day wear a mask everywhere you go CDC guideline, but we did see her yesterday presiding over the vote without a mask on, and we saw her earlier today give a big hug to the recently confirmed Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson without a mask on. That hug today follows Tuesday's kiss, where Speaker Pelosi planted one on the president just before we learned that she tested positive for COVID, but the White House insists that the kiss, not close contact. And so far, even though 2 members of the cabinet have tested positive for COVID, several others were here at events indoors at the White House where Speaker Pelosi was just before we learned that she was positive. No plans to change the president's schedule, at least not yet. John? Thanks, guys.
All right, folks, welcome. We just wanted to let Peter Doocy do his thing. He was just doing some clips for his report coming later on. But as you guys heard, the White House hasn't changed any of Biden's schedule or the way that he's doing events. Like Peter Ducey said, it's only a matter of time before we hear Biden has COVID. The White House continues to say that he was not in close contact with Pelosi when he was. Pelosi was there smooching with them, the day before yesterday when they signed that reform bill, the postal reform bill, and she was also there smooching with Biden when Obama was at the White House. So who knows what's going to happen? Obviously, we hope that everybody stays healthy and safe and everything, but the White House can't spin this anymore than they have already tried for the last day or so. There's a lot going on in the news, folks. There's a lot going on in the news. As you guys know, the GOP and Disney keep going head to head. But now the GOP has found a way to pretty much stick it to Disney. I don't know if you guys know this, but patents and copyright protection only secures a work of art for 100 years. And the Disney copyright for Mickey Mouse is set to expire. So if the Republicans take control of the House and the Senate in 2022, then that is going to be something that Disney is going to beg like Pluto, like a dog, to the Republicans to help extend their copyright protection over Mickey Mouse. And the Republicans are already telling Disney, guess what? We're not going to help you. Once the copyright protection for Mickey Mouse is done, you're done. And we're not going to help you for Mickey Mouse. We're not going to help you for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We're not going to help you for anything. Don't forget, I think even the name Disney can come up for a copyright expiration. Let's see. Will the name Disney ever lose copyright protection? Let's see. Will the name Disney ever Okay, so it says Mickey Mouse will enter the public domain. That's what they're terrified about, and they want congressional help in order to extend their copyright over Mickey Mouse. But it says once 2024 comes, again, once they take over, the Republicans will take over. And I'm telling you this not because of what's happening, but I'm telling you guys this because it will happen. The Republicans will take control of the House. The Republicans will take control of the Senate. It's a given. Why? Because of the economy and everything else. People are angry. People don't trust the Democrats. So the Republicans will take power. Will regain the Senate and the House in 2024. And it says once 2024 comes, Disney won't have any copyright protection for films regarding Mickey Mouse. And we're talking about shows, movies, everything. So Fantasia and all of these movies regarding Mickey Mouse will not have any copyright protection. Will Disney ever lose copyright? Let's see. And that's just one of the characters that are losing copyright protection in 24. But in 25, they're going to lose copyright protection for Minnie Mouse. So Minnie Mouse came a year after Mickey Mouse. So they're going to lose protection for that too.
I don't know the spot, so I'm like figuring a lot of things out. Oh, that's bad! Oh, look at it! That's so funny. Good luck on your journey. Yeah, I think I'm gonna make it. Hopefully by the end of the year.
End of the year, probably right. Really briefing's probably the good, yeah. That's how I feel about like Game of Thrones too. Like I know I should read the books and I've like tried to read the first one, but I love the show, but except for the ending. But I need to.
The books were real page turners. I really love that series. This, I mean, I appreciate it. I love it, but it's a slog. Yeah. Except in some parts.
Sometimes it's fun.
But like, I just have really songs super creepy. Yeah, this feels kind of wasteful. Like, is that how I really want to be spending my time? So.
All right, so that's I'm trying to find out if the actual name Disney will ever lose copyright protection. As of right now, it's obviously it's a trademark, but will they be able to enforce that trademark and for how much longer? That is something that that is very interesting too. It says so again. Disney is going to try to beg like a dog in 2024, while the Republicans are in power, for them to extend the copyright protections for Mickey Mouse and others. So let's see here. As you guys know, Winnie the Pooh lost copyright protection this year. It's no longer copyright protected. So it says the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. U.S. copyright law is generally limited to the life of the author plus an additional 70 years. There are, of course, exemptions. The Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998 addresses when a creation is a work for hire, which protects the company copyright for 95 years from the first publication or 120 years after its creator, whichever ends sooner. So let's see, Winnie the Pooh, Mickey Mouse. So yeah, so that's something that the Republicans are going to have leverage against Disney, is not helping them extend that copyright protection for Mickey Mouse and other characters of the other franchises of Disney. So as the years come, you guys are going to see that more and more of this work and others are going to lose copyright in 2022. A lot of stuff lost copyright protection. In 2024, a lot more things are going to lose copyright protection in 26. In 2030, I think anything before 1950 is going to lose copyright. And in 2035, anything before 1960 is going to lose copyright. So, you know, as more years come and go, you're going to see a lot of stuff that are going to lose copyright. And at that point, anybody can use it because it will be in the public domain. So all of these gigantic companies and corporations are terrified. And they're going to go to Congress, they're going to go to the Senate, and they're going to beg like dogs to get extensions. And that is when the Republicans can actually do something about it. Compared to before, that they're all just talk and just bark and no bite. But now they actually have a chance to bite. So let's see what happens. Let's see if they actually grow a spine and grow some balls and actually do something about it instead of just complain and talk. But we'll see in 2024.
I know, but if you I don't want to because we have the
All right, folks. So also in the news, as you guys know, Elon Musk has bought 10% stake in Twitter. Twitter employees are revolting, and now, Elon Musk is going to do a Q&A with Twitter employees. I think it's going to happen within the next day or so. And he's going to most definitely be asked the question, will you unban Trump? Now, I am not going to speculate, nor am I going to say what's actually going to happen, but I just want to remind everyone that Elon Musk is not a big fan of Trump. He's just not. Trump tried to put him on the business committee. I think it was on the business committee, on the technology committee, and on a committee that had to do with electric vehicles. And he basically got out of all of them. He said he wanted to be no part of it. He exited out of all of them. Now, was it because of pressure from his own business and his people buying his products? Who knows? But he wanted no part of the Trump White House at all. He exited all of those committees, and he told Trump, he's like, you know what? I don't want nothing to do with you. Please don't invite me. Please don't involve me in anything. And Trump did exactly that. He didn't involve him in anything. Now, Trump has talked about Elon Musk, saying, yeah, he's a genius. He's done very good things. He's building rockets, and he's, at the time, giving millions and millions of dollars to the federal government to rent spaces for his rockets and to shoot up rockets into space and all this other stuff. So Trump was really happy with them because he was giving the federal government billions of dollars. But other than that, Elon Musk is not a fan of Trump. But obviously nobody's going to believe me, so might as well just leave it to Elon Musk to answer the question, is he going to reinstate Trump on Twitter? So, as you guys know, we have talked about this regarding a recession that is coming. The Deutsche Bank was the first one to actually talk about it, and they were warning that a recession might be coming to the United States, especially right now that the Federal Reserve continues to push up and raise interest rates. But now, Bank of America is coming out and saying there is going to be a recession shock. It says that the macroeconomic picture is deteriorating fast and could push the U.S. economy into a recession as the Federal Reserve tightens its monetary policy to tame surging inflation. It says inflation shock worsening, the rate shock just beginning. Recession shock is coming. That is according to to Bank of America. So we have been warning about this for now a month, I think, a little bit less or a little bit more than a month. I think I started talking about this at the middle of last month. I told you guys a recession is coming. And then that's when the whole Deutsche Bank came after a few weeks, and they warned that a recession is coming, and now Bank of America is coming out and they're warning that a recession is coming, which solidifies the fact that a recession is definitely coming. So prepare for that. The Federal Reserve already raised a quarter onto the interest rate. They're going to raise another quarter within a month. They're going to raise a half at the beginning of towards the middle of the summer. They're going to raise another half at the beginning of the fall, and the final half will come up pretty much towards the end of the year, right before the holidays. As soon as the holidays come, and boom, here, have this. And that's going to be everybody's Christmas present, another half on interest rates. So they're planning between 3 to 4% raise in interest rates. They believe that if they raise 3% of interest rates, they're going to lower inflation, which is stupid. All they're doing is they're trickling a recession. And it's going to be one of those great recessions, similar to 2007, but worse. Because this time it's not just going to be... it's not just going to revolve around the housing market. It's going to revolve around every single aspect of everyone's life. So that's what's happening. Bank of America coming out and pretty much giving that warning. Later on, you're going to see Chase coming out and everybody else pretty much saying similar things to that. Now, let's see here. So I saw this report regarding fake Secret Service agents infiltrating the residences of both Biden and Kamala Harris. Now, this is very interesting. We don't have 100% of the facts as of yet, but it says, let's see. Oh, wait, wrong one. Give me 1 second.
The announcement outside. We don't care where you go. Just get outside. Yeah, exactly.
So it says that Secret Service agents at Biden and Harris's residence are under investigation after 2 fake agents infiltrated the team. 2 fake Secret Service agents infiltrated a team that is positioned to basically take care of Biden and Kamala Harris. That is crazy. And it says Secret Service agents assigned to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are reportedly under investigation following the arrest of 2 allegedly phony federal officers. 2 of them. It says Arian Taradeza, I hope I said that right, and Haider Shur Ali were taken into custody on Wednesday for allegedly pretending to be Homeland Security officers. It says that the 2 conmen were accused of posing as federal agents, showering U.S. Secret Service officials with gifts, including rent-free penthouse worth over $40,000 a year, high-end electronics, and various weapons during a investigation. So it says that according to the Daily Mail, Secret Service agents assigned to detail for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris residences are among those reportedly caught in the scheme. So I guess they were just trying to get dirt. Who knows? Who knows what the actual end game was for them? But these 2 fake federal agents were trying to bribe the Secret Service agents that worked for Biden and for Kamala, I guess, to get information. It says at least one of the Secret Service agents under investigation was assigned to detail the protection of Harris's residence at number 1 Observatory Circle at the Naval Observatory, according to reports.
Okay, those are last.
It says the other was reportedly on the presidential protective detail and regularly traveled with Biden on Air Force One, so directly connected to Biden. So they're definitely going to talk about that here, why federal agents are infiltrating, fake federal agents are infiltrating, and pretty much not only infiltrating, but also trying to get dirt on Biden and Harris from within. Bribing Secret Service agents. That's some crazy stuff. It says since February 2020, the 2 men supposedly integrated with actual federal agents by showering them with gifts like iPhones, surveillance systems, drones, flat screen TVs, weapons, and other things, according to court documents. It says that one of the people arrested has been specifically named in court documents for offering up a car for Secret Service agents to use, claiming that the black GMC SUV was a official government vehicle. There's more to this story because you can't just randomly come in as a federal agent and say, yeah, here, have an iPhone. Yeah, here, have a this, have a that. No, there's way more to this story. That's just preliminary BS that has come out regarding this story. You can't just randomly go up to... It's like, for instance, you randomly go up to someone on the street and give them $5. They're not just going to be like, oh, yeah, cool, thank you for the $5. They're going to be like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on, you know? Same thing with these agents. We're talking about Secret Service agents that are trained to make sure that they know what's going on and they are able to read people. How can these quote-unquote fake agents go up to them and give them free iPhones and, you know, all these other crazy things, and those people are like, oh, yeah, cool, you know, thanks for the iPhone. No, that there's way more to this story that that has not come out yet and will come out soon, and we'll be here at Golden State Times to let you guys know what's going on with that. But there's way more to this story than that they want to come out as of right now. There's a lot of questions that are going to be about that here at the White House press briefing, so stay tuned for that. All right, folks. So really quick, as they take pictures and do all their thing here at the White House press briefing, some type of international news that we're going to be covering right now. I saw something very, very, very interesting, and I want to know what you guys think about this. So, the president of El Salvador, Bukele. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him or who he is. So he's a Palestinian descendant president in El Salvador. I guess El Salvador has a huge Palestinian community. So he is, his parents were both born in Palestine, but he was born in El Salvador. Somehow they ended up over there. So anyway, so he became president. And he has been a hard stance president against the gangs. So in the last, I think it was over the weekend, he arrested more than 6,000 gang members. And the gang members in El Salvador pretty much said that that because of all the gang members being arrested, that the people were going to pay the price, right? So there was a lot of violence going on. A lot of killings have been happening. I think over 80 people have been killed and stuff like that. Because, and the gangs are saying it's a direct effect of the president going after the gangs. Okay. Well, Bugalele came out and said, look, we're not going to be this soft on crime type of administration. He said, you know what? Okay, so if you guys are going to try to take it out on the community, meaning the people, then we are not going to feed your homeboys in prison. He says, the more the killings happen, the less that they have to eat, up to the point where they're not even going to eat one grain of rice. And let's see if how your homeboys do or how long they last in prison. And he basically came out and he said, I can care less what the United States thinks about this. He said, if the United States has a problem, then tell them to send troops in to take care of the people in El Salvador. So I don't know, I don't know if he's really thinking through all of this. Obviously, it's very different. It's very different. Hold on, give me one second. So it's very different in El Salvador, the way that they do things compared to here, obviously. But that's his stance right now. That if these gangbangers continue to cause havoc and kill innocents in El Salvador, then he'll stop feeding the prisoners, the people inside prisons, up to the point where he will give zero food. There will be no running water. And all he will do is just put the military in to to have order. But those people that he's like, I don't care if they starve. And if any international agencies or any international governments have any problems with that, according to him, that they can send in help and try to help them out regarding the new wave of crime happening in El Salvador. So, who knows? Who knows what's happening regarding everything in El Salvador? But I thought it was very, very, very interesting, the stance that this president is taking in his country.
But you should just try Cleveland also just to see if it works. Letters that aren't there. What letters do they have? Well, they have like this. They have a book to make it's like softens every letter. But I'm really not good. Like I said, some of my wedding bells we check, which everybody thought was cute, except the Czech people who had no idea what I was saying. Like no clue. No. The Kimber the paper later. I was like.
There's that really good story that Chas Contreras, right?
Oh, about the
24 Lakers guy.
It's such a good story.
I don't know if she's just really visual content, but you're like, I would never.
Yeah.
And they're rich.
Like she did a story about like a dog park. And I realized it was very
This one was wild, though. Also made me really think sometimes.
well, I mean, she talks a little bit
The guy goes to in that TV.
Yeah. It felt like there was like a subtle error. Like the first question was like, why are you can do this? Why are you not? Yeah, like why are you a carpet cleaner?
Yeah.
I mean, they talked about this Asperger's and all that stuff. The story that was just like, I don't know, I just felt like there was like a piece that she kind of danced around.
Because like white shit.
Yeah, well, and it's because he has a mental illness, right? It's just a mental illness that he said like wonderful way to get treated for it, right?
Leave it there.
Really?
Yeah,
Also very
well, I mean, like, so, like,
2-minute warning to press briefing. 2-minute warning to press briefing.
All right, folks. So 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning for the White House press briefing. We're updating our website right now, goldenstatetimes.com. As you guys know, there is going to be an election in France, and Le Pen is closing in to Macron, and Macron is starting to sweat. He is freaking out that he is going to lose. The EU puppet is going to lose, and but let's see what happens. Who knows? Who knows what can happen at the last second? And let's see what happens in France. But that's also happening in international news. The White House press briefing should start very, very soon. 2-minute warning.
Yeah, so you just like, yeah, exactly. So like, just make your kids watch TV and get out. There's also similar reviews in languages too, like Slovakian, as she explains it, it's like Czech, but not as grammatically complicated. And so like, I mean, like a Polish friend will speak for her, to speak to her in Polish. Then what they say in Czech, it's just,
It's back. This is a big move. Dialing it up. The rest of it was like that.
yeah, like why people get a paycheck. Yeah.
We need this
Yeah. Doing that tonight?
Yeah, he's probably gonna come. I saw it on my social media. And so like, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just one of the wild.
Hi, everyone.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Is there more to say on this historic day? Okay. So wanted to first start by outlining our security assistance to Ukraine. And there's been a lot of good questions about this, and we thought this would be a helpful rundown for all of you. It's the Department of Defense also put out a fact sheet that has this detailed as well. The security assistance the Biden administration is providing to Ukraine is enabling critical success on the battlefield against the Russian invading force. The number one reason that they're able to fight back is their bravery and courage. The number two reason is the security assistance that we are providing, and we are providing in coordination with our allies and partners. We're working around the clock to fulfill Ukraine's priority security assistance requests, delivering weapons from U.S. stocks when they are available, and facilitating the delivery of weapons by allies and partners
partners when their systems better suit Ukraine's needs. All of the anti-armor and anti-air systems from the 2 packages of security assistance the President approved in March have been delivered. We are continuing work with allies and partners to identify additional weapon systems to help the Ukrainian military defend its country. Obviously, there was the announcement about the S-300s earlier today, and our efforts to work to backfill that. At President Zelensky's request, this includes helping Ukraine acquire long-range anti-aircraft systems and munitions that they are trained to use. More than 30 nations have sent Ukraine security assistance, thanks in part to the leadership of President Biden and diplomacy that he has been implementing for months now. On April 5th, we announced an additional $100 million in security assistance to Ukraine through Presidential Drawdown Authority. We also announced $300 million in security assistance on April 1st under authorities provided by the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. These announcements bring the U.S. commitment to more than $1.7 billion in security assistance since Russia's February 24th invasion and $2.4 billion since the beginning of the administration. I will not read through all of this for you. You can all, of course, read it yourself, and we will provide all of the list to all of you if you did not receive the Department of Defense fact sheet. Also wanted to note that today, according to a new independent study, the Biden administration's historic vaccination program saved 2.3 million lives in the United States, prevented 17 million hospitalizations and 66 million cases, and avoided $900 billion in healthcare costs. Over the past 15 months, the president has mounted a successful nationwide vaccination effort while executing a comprehensive strategy on treatments, testing, and more. As a result, schools are open, our economy is booming, and importantly, today's report shows we've spared millions of families the immeasurable loss that too many others have suffered. And because of the president's comprehensive response, we've entered a new moment in our fight against the virus. While COVID isn't over, Americans now have more tools than ever before to protect themselves, and this country is moving forward safely, back to many of our more normal routines. Unfortunately, Republicans in Congress are holding up critical funding. We need to make even more progress to save even more lives and to stay prepared against any potential surges or variants. Inaction will leave our nation less prepared for future surges and variants. It will mean fewer vaccines, treatments, and tests for the American people. This is deeply disappointing, and it should be unacceptable to every American. Also wanted to give you a sense of the week ahead. Just one trip next week that we announced earlier today. At this point, there could be more. On Thursday, the president will travel to Greensboro, North Carolina to discuss his administration's efforts to make more in America, rebuild our supply chains here at home, and bring down costs for the American people as part of building a better America. Following that trip, he will travel to Camp David, where he will remain over the Easter weekend. And then finally, as I've been doing a little bit this week, I just want to shout out some amazing colleagues I have. Lewis, who we have stolen from FEMA, not really stolen, he's a detailing, well, he's a fellow, actually. We've had him since November. Soon they will steal him back. And Lewis has been remarkable. Lewis has been reading Russian media, which comes in great use. He has been tracking down a range of coverage about the war in Ukraine. He has been relentless in giving us updates and providing us information, and we're incredibly grateful to Lewis, and we'll be sad to see you go back to FEMA to do very important work. Many of you know Amanda Finney. I call her the mayor because she knows every person, seemingly, who works in the building and on the complex, which is about 2,000 people. I would not survive this job without Amanda Finney. You probably would all not have received all the help you have received about a range of things without Amanda Finney. She is smart, sassy, level-headed, stable. She's remarkable, and we may all work for her one day in some capacity. I certainly may, but I am very grateful to her, so just wanted to shout that out. And her yellow suit is very joyful for a joyful day. Okay, with that, it's a Friday.
Friday. Thanks so much. I've got a couple things.
Sure.
First on this, the missile attack at this train station, does the administration think that Russia might have intentionally targeted the train station, knowing that there would be a lot of civilians there?
Well, what we've seen over the course of the last 6 weeks or more than that, has been what the president himself has characterized as war crimes, which is the intentional targeting of civilians. This is yet another horrific atrocity committed by Russia, striking civilians who are trying to evacuate and reach safety. Where we are now is we're going to support efforts to investigate this attack as we document Russia's actions, hold them accountable, and we will continue to surge security assistance and weapons deliveries to help Ukraine defend their country. Obviously, the targeting of civilians would certainly be a war crime, and we've already called a range of the actions we've seen to date a war crime, but we're going to be supporting efforts to investigate exactly what happened here.
Okay, changing topics. Senior administration officials have said publicly, gone on TV, suggesting it's possible the president could get COVID. I'm wondering, is the administration attempting to prepare the public for the possibility of the president getting the testing positive?
Well, what we're trying to do is be as transparent and direct with the American people as possible about the fact that, the president takes a range of protocols. We have a range of protocols in place here that are aligned and even beyond the CDC requirements. Those include, as we've outlined here many times in the past, testing before you see the president, testing before you travel with him, social distancing when possible. We believe we have the tools and protocol to address this point we are in the virus, but like anyone else, the president may at some point test positive for COVID. And while we have seen an increase in recent, I would just note, while we have seen an increase in cases around people, I should just say that some of us may know. I would also note that cases remain down 95% since the height of Omicron. That is fact, that is data, even as we've seen cases of people we know. But what is important for the American people to know is that he has taken a range of precautions, as we all have, but he's also taken steps like getting the second booster, as he did last week in public. And his doctors are comfortable that he could continue to carry out his duties because of all these steps and precautions and protections he's taken. And we certainly, that's one of the reasons we encourage the rest of the American public to do the same. Go ahead.
This is the first time that we've heard White House officials sort of describe it as a certain possibility that the president could get COVID. Are you saying that you think it's more possible now, given sort of the little outbreak that we're seeing in D.C. right now?
No, we're just saying that it is a possibility. Again, cases are down 95% across the country since the height of Omicron. While cases are up in Washington, D.C., they're also far below the height of the cases and where they were in Omicron. But it is also the case that despite all of the precautions we take, and even with the president being double boosted, he could still test positive for COVID, just as many people in the White House have, many people in the press corps have. That is a possibility, and we want to be transparent with the American public about that.
By our rough count here, you have at least 18 politicians and people close to the president who've now tested positive this week. I mean, you've reiterated all of the extra precautions that you are taking to try and keep him safe, some of the extra masking and testing protocol. But just to be safe, have you considered maybe cutting down some of the big indoor events or scaling back any, changing sort of your tactic with some of these events?
Well, clearly we did the event, the historic event today outside. That was in part to ensure that we could have a huge number of people on the South Lawn celebrating the confirmation of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. But also we know that having events outside is better for safety protocols. There's no question about that. But what's important for the American people to know and understand is that because of all the steps we've taken, because the president is double boosted, because of, obviously he has access to the best healthcare in the world, but his doctors have assessed that these are risks that can be taken. We risk assess just like everybody out in the country, and it's important for him to be able to continue his presidential duties now, and even if he tests positive in the future. Just like Americans out there in the country are taking their kids to school, they go to the grocery store, maybe they're making a decision to go to dinner. This is a time where we are certainly living with the virus, but we have a range of tools at our disposal to do that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. A couple of quick questions on oil and then one on the French election. We have some reporting showing that the administration is considering easing sanctions to allow some oil imports from Venezuela as a way to replace banned energy shipments from Russia. Can you talk a little bit about any such considerations?
I'm not aware of that being under consideration.
Okay. Okay. At the moment, is it going to perhaps be considered for going forward?
It has
or-
not been, so I'm not aware of being under consideration.
Okay, and one other one on when Dilip was in India. He delivered this warning to India to not raise purchases of Russian oil. And we were wondering if perhaps sanctions along similar lines are being considered for other nations, asking them to keep purchases of Russian oil only limited to previous levels and perhaps not
First,
raising.
I wouldn't characterize it as a warning, nor did we at the time. He went and had a constructive conversation and made clear that while it's the decision of each individual country, including India, to determine whether they're going to import Russian oil, it is only 1 to 2% of their imports. About 10% of their imports is from the United States. And so he conveyed, of course, they should abide by sanctions, which are not related to that decision, but also we would be here to help them diversify and move towards even reducing further beyond the 1 to 2%.
Is that decision perhaps being relayed also to other countries, asking them to perhaps follow the same guidelines?
Well, we conveyed every country to abide by sanctions. And we've conveyed to a range of European countries, as you know, and as we've talked about, that as they work to diversify their energy sources, that we are here to assist in those efforts. And there are a range of steps we've taken, including efforts on LNG. I mean, that's natural gas, of course, but efforts on LNG and moving some resources from Asia and other places, and ensuring that there are options to for any country that wants to diversify their energy sources.
Okay, and one on the French elections.
Sure.
Are you watching the French elections coming up this Sunday, perhaps with any concerns, especially with the rise of Le Pen, who is a far-right candidate running against Macron?
We are certainly watching the elections, but I don't have any prediction of what the outcome will be. And once there is an outcome, I'm sure we will speak to it. Go ahead.
Understanding it's a fluid situation, but the atrocities in Bucha serve as an accelerant towards the latest sanctions package, the coordination between...
That we announced 2 days ago? Yes.
Is there any sense that the strike that we saw this morning will also accelerate talks on additional sanctions between the coordinated allies?
Well, I would say just to go back to a couple of days ago, that obviously the sanctions package we announced on Wednesdays with the biggest bank in Russia, Sberbank, certainly that was augmented as a result of the atrocities that we were seeing in Bucha. And what we have done to date, and we will continue to do, is look at, unfortunately, the continued atrocities that we're seeing in the country and assess how that's going to impact sanctions, consequences, and obviously additional security assistance. So that's how we've been evaluating and working with our allies to date. And I'm certain, given the video footage we've seen on airwaves across the world and photos, that this will be a part of the discussion that our national security officials are having with their counterparts moving forward.
Okay, on the S-300, it's been fairly apparent for the last several weeks that was a process that you guys were engaged in.
Yeah.
I know you are deliberately ambiguous as to some of the other processes that may be taking place, but is it fair to say that there are multiple other tracks that are similarly far down the line for other weapon systems, or how can you characterize how far along you are compared to where you are now at the S-300 on other systems?
So, well, one, I mean, part of our objective here, and the S-300s are an example of that, is to see that we can get defensive equipment that Ukrainians are trained on and that we know it can be effective moved to Ukraine. So we are, of course, grateful to Slovakia, and we work closely with Slovakia to also meet their defense needs. And part of our considerations here, as we're looking at the list of requests that the Ukrainians have, is what do we have access to here in the United States? What military equipment do we have access to? There are systems we may not have access to, or we may not even have those systems. So how can we work with countries around the world, like Slovakia, to meet those needs? So there are a range of those conversations happening with our partners and allies at the same time. I will tell you that often it is the preference of these partners and allies not to be public about these conversations, and at times it is the preference of the Ukrainians, and we certainly respect that.
One final one. It's been a pretty historic 24 hours for the history of the Supreme Court, for the country. We've seen the president speak publicly. Can you talk about, give any color in terms of what he's been like behind the scenes, delivering on a campaign pledge, putting the first African-American woman on the court, how he's been with staff, with the justice, all of that?
Sure. I'm going to try not to ugly cry about this day, which we were all doing on the South Lawn. Look, I was with the president before he went out. I was there on time. I didn't run out, as you would have seen. I was with him before when he was doing his final review of his remarks, and what he was reflecting on is, and you saw some of this in his speech, were the number of people, whether it is people who work at the White House, people who are part of his everyday, stewards or others who have commented to him how significant this moment is, and how, in a place where you are just trying to make it through every day, and every day is history in many ways. History can be heartbreaking, and many days it has been. History can be exhausting, and many days it has been, and history can be joyful. And today was a joyful day in history, and that is certainly how the president was. You saw his granddaughter, Naomi, who he talked about in the speech, come out. She was there also for a brief greet with Justice Jackson beforehand, and he made an effort to also introduce the new Associate Justice to some members of his close staff who just were inspired by the significance of today as well. So I would say there was a deep recognition of this moment of history, a joy in reaching it, and I think we've all been saying to each other in the hallways, no one can steal our sunshine today, because that's how everybody is feeling. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. To follow up on that, did the president spend any time with the Jackson family before the formal event or afterwards?
Well, I think as we confirmed, she signed her commission, or he signed her commission, and her family was with her for that. So it was briefly before he came out to do the remarks.
Okay, got it. And to follow up on a question from Katie earlier this week about other precautions that the president may or may not be taking, do you know if he is taking any monoclonal antibodies to help prevent catching COVID?
Well, Evusheld is for immunocompromised. That would be the preemptive step, and he's not immunocompromised, so he's not taking Evusheld.
Is he taking any other medication that might help?
Like what?
Well, I don't actually know. That's a great question. Other than the booster, we've heard other people taking other kinds of prophylactics to prevent it. Is he taking anything that you know of?
There are not other, this is why I asked, there are not other, Evusheld is obviously one that if you're immunocompromised, is something that has been approved and recommended. Since he does not categorize that way, he isn't taking it. But other than that, the precautions we're taking are, he obviously got the booster when he was eligible last week, and we take additional steps, including testing, socially distanced meetings when possible, as well, in order to protect him as much as possible.
Thank you. And then just one more on something that Samantha Power shared.
Sure.
She said that Russian forces have killed at least 7 journalists in Ukraine in 6 weeks, and that Putin soldiers are killing journalists at an unprecedented rate. Is there any intelligence, any information that Putin is targeting journalists? And do you have any warning that you're sharing with American journalists covering the war?
Well, one, we value the role that American journalists and journalists from around the world, that felt like a direction somewhere, so, have played in bringing to light for a lot of people in this country this war, what's happening, the devastation, the horrors. It has a direct impact on people's emotional response in the United States. There's no question about that. We recognize the war of journalists in war zones, of course, and value it. And as you all know, we also work very closely with leaders of news organizations to ensure that they have up-to-date information to keep members of their media organizations safe. It is still a war zone, an active war zone, and we're still conveying that Americans should not be there, right, including journalists. In terms of specific targeting, we knew from the beginning, and we have talked publicly about this, of course, that President Putin and the Russian military was going to target, was intending to target, or could target civilians and others, including journalists could be part of that. But I don't have any new intelligence or anything beyond that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Is there a carve-out in CDC regulations for COVID for Vice President?
Tell me more, Peter. I'm sure this is going somewhere. Let's see.
What
do you got for me on a Friday?
The CDC says for people exposed to COVID, up to date on their COVID-19 vaccinations, do not go to places where you are unable to wear a well-fitting mask. So why is she here at the White House today, giving the new Supreme Court justice a big hug with no mask?
You mean when she gave her a hug outside?
Yes.
She was outside.
Does the CDC say the people who are close contact can give people hugs outside?
We know, Peter, that outside you can benefit significantly being outside. That's why we had the event outside today. I will tell you that the Vice President has been wearing a mask inside. When there was a private greet, they were all wearing masks before they went up.
She wasn't wearing a mask yesterday at the Senate?
She was playing an important role in confirming or overseeing the confirmation of the first black woman to the Supreme Court. The vast majority, as was on camera, Peter, as was on camera. Let me finish my answer here, because Fox and others, I don't know actually that Fox carried it, but others did, saw that she was socially distanced from people for the vast majority of her time overseeing that confirmation yesterday.
So this is not a case of rules for thee, but not for VP.
In fact, the Vice President wore a mask inside today when she was both with the president, with her staff, other people. She was outside at the event. She was socially distanced for 99.9% of the event today, and she had an emotional moment, which is understandable.
Okay, and one other topic. Following up on the smartphones that are being given to border crossers with technology so they can be tracked or so they can check in. Is there any plan to give free smartphones to U.S. citizens that want them?
Should we not be tracking migrants who irregularly cross the border?
I'm asking if...
Or do you have an alternative suggestion for how they should be tracked?
I, unfortunately, have not been asked to make U.S. immigration policy. That's not
Today's your moment.
Well, it'd be great if anybody that wanted a free phone and a free monthly plan could get one. So is that going to be an offer for everybody, or just people that walk into the country illegally?
Well, Peter, as when we talked about this the other day, what I noted to you is that we have a range of means of tracking individuals who irregularly migrate to the country in order to ensure that they are meeting their notice to appear obligations and that they are appearing in court when they should appear in court. Phones is one of them. There are also ankle devices and a range of tracking devices. 80% of individuals of non-citizens released at the border from DHS custody under prosecutorial discretion have either received a notice to appear or are still within the window to report. So yes, there's telephonic reporting. There is SmartLink, which enables participant monitoring via smartphone. There's the global positioning system. These are the range of means with modern technology that we monitor.
Last one on this. Does the president have any plans to figure out what these small towns who are bracing for a major influx in migrants next month need by making his first ever trip to the border?
I have nothing to predict for you in terms of additional trips. The president will be traveling the country, but I don't have any more specifics for you at this point.
Just
Thanks
for
for the
clarity,
question.
earlier you guys told us via pool that the president was tested negative. That was today, for clarity?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the cadence has clearly changed, right? We knew there was one on Wednesday, he was negative. Today's Friday, he tested negative. Just for keeping track of it, is it now 3 times a week, 2 times a week? Is there a way to
His
describe
doctor
it?
makes an assessment on how many times he should be tested, and we do our best to provide that information to you as he's tested.
And aside from the time he spent with Ketanji Brown Jackson, her family, there was no, because there's precedent to this, there was no indoor reception, indoor ceremony that existed, some kind the cameras didn't see before. Okay. Let me, if I can, during his remarks today, the president said something that was a bit striking. He was condemning some of the conservative Republicans and their criticisms of Judge Jackson when she was testifying recently. He said there was verbal abuse, the anger, the constant interruptions, the most vile, baseless, vile assertions and accusations. Whew. Is that a preview of messaging that we're going to hear from the president heading into the midterms? Is that a message that the White House wants to deliver and will be repeating?
I don't believe that the conduct of senators at a hearing is going to be central to the president's remarks when he's out traveling the country. But I think what he was speaking to on a historic day is that while Judge Jackson was the picture, now Justice Jackson, was the picture of dignity in her hearings, some others in the room decided to be the opposite. And he is somebody who has more experience overseeing Supreme Court hearings than anyone living. He has overseen them during Republican and Democratic presidents and expects a certain level of conduct, professionalism, and decorum. And that is not what we saw.
For today, as opposed to like a central theme that we'll see in terms of contrast.
I would say that I think the American people can expect that he'll continue to talk when he's out in the country, for whatever reason, about how to bring down their costs, how to make sure that he is fighting for them and bringing them relief, and how he's going to get the COVID pandemic under control, less about the conduct of senators at a hearing.
Let me ask a very quick question then on costs, if I can. Right now, the cost of gas in this country on average is $4.14. Does the White House want a gas tax holiday?
It is certainly on the table, and certainly something we continue to consider. We have seen a number of states do that, and it can have an impact, about 18 cents, I believe, if I remember correctly. One of the reasons why we're considering it, our primary focus to date, as you all know, has been taking steps to increase supply and get more supply into the global marketplace. But it remains an option under consideration. Go ahead.
The UN today put out a report saying that global food prices in March reached a record high.
Yeah.
What is the U.S. doing, if anything, to mitigate possible additional increases here?
Here in the United States? Well, it is something that we are certainly watching very closely while we continue to believe that the impact will largely be in the Middle East and in Africa, I believe, in a lot of other parts of the world, less in the United States. We are continuing to work, our Department of Agriculture is continuing to work with farmers and suppliers about any needs we have here, and the President is continuing to work to bring down costs in a range of areas for the American people as we prepare for the impacts of this war.
It was pretty widely reported yesterday, prior to her COVID diagnosis, that Speaker Pelosi was planning a trip to Taiwan. Beijing reacted very negatively to that. Is the U.S., is the Biden administration comfortable if she were to do that, such a high-ranking U.S. official?
I think we understood her trip. I don't have any further comment on it. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Two questions for you. The first, today my colleagues in the UK reported that Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, had a U.S. green card which he surrendered this past October. He's been an MP since 2015, and USCIS manual says that serving in a foreign government or standing for election in a foreign government is not compatible with lawful permanent resident status. Why was this not flagged earlier?
I would point you to the State Department or the Department of Homeland Security. I don't have any more comment from here.
I mean, is it a problem? Does the president see it as a problem that possible for someone to serve at a high level in a foreign government and maintain lawful permanent resident status in the U.S.? I mean, what if this were someone who was serving in the Russian Duma?
It wasn't. But I would also, again, point you to the portions of the government that oversee green cards and oversee, the status of documents. I'm happy to bump it for them as well and see if there's more we can provide to you.
Second question. There's a death row inmate in Texas, Melissa Lucio. She's set to be executed soon. Many experts believe her confession was coerced and is false. She has bipartisan support for clemency and support from the EU and many other foreign allies. Would the president consider asking Governor Abbott to intervene?
Well, you know the president's position and view on the death penalty, and there's an ongoing review at the Department of Justice at a federal level. This is obviously at a state level. Right. I don't have anything to predict
then
beyond
a follow-up. Given his commitment to police reform, would he consider asking the DOJ to prohibit police departments that receive federal funds from using the Reid technique for interrogations? It's considered to create a lot of false confessions.
Well, again, I know the Department of Justice has taken a number of steps, including on chokeholds and other actions that needed to be reformed in police departments across the country. I don't have anything to preview or predict in terms of additional steps. The president supports their efforts to do more. Many of them have talked about their desire to do more, and obviously we are continuing to consider an executive order on police reform here, given there has been an inability of Congress to move forward. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. There's some pretty desperate images coming out of Shanghai right now, which is under lockdown for COVID. People begging for food and medicine. Is the White House monitoring that? Is there anything the U.S. can do to help the humanitarian situation there? And also on the supply chain front, is the administration aware of any further supply chain snags coming as a result of this, and how are you prepared to address them?
Sure. Well, first, on the first part of your question, the State Department is closely monitoring the situation. They are providing consistent updates of the situation on the ground, and will certainly assess with USAID and others if there's additional assistance that could be provided. On the supply chain component, what we know is that the port is continuing to operate normally, and where we're seeing the impacts, which still could have an impact over the course of time, of course, is factories, warehouses, and trucking, where we are seeing shutdowns within the region, which we know could cause delays, especially for air cargo as well. Because this is just happening, we don't have a prediction at this point on how that could impact bigger global supply chain issues. It depends on a lot of factors, how long, et cetera. But it is something we are closely monitoring, and it is something we will continue to work to address if it extends farther.
And there's one more housekeeping item. Do you have a timing update on when the president might sign the trade preference bill on Russia that passed?
I don't, and I know you and others have been looking for this, and let me see if I can get an answer before we all wrap up today. Go ahead.
Jen, could you speak to the efficacy of sanctions? I know there was a new sanctions package rolled out this week, and initially we heard a lot from administration officials about this being a deterrent. I know that has changed, and so can you speak to sort of the end goal and what is the efficacy of sanctions?
Well, I would say that we have a couple of objectives at this point as it relates to the war in Ukraine. One is to impose severe consequences, send a marker for the world and for history about the horrific nature of these atrocities. These consequences, and the second part of our objective is to ensure that these consequences are having a significant impact on the economy in Russia. We're seeing an inflationary rate of about 15%, a projection of a contraction of 15% in the Russian economy. 600 private sector companies have left Russia. We know it is having the impact that the world intended. This is the most significant coordinated set of sanctions ever done in history on this large of an economy. The third objective here is to make it much more difficult for President Putin to fund his war. And if you look back, say earlier this week, at the example of the bond payments and how Russia has basically been put in a decision of in a place where they either have to use their limited resources they have that are also being used to fund the war to prevent a default or default. That is the position they're in at this point in time, but also because we have cut them off through export controls and a number of other means from having access to materials and technology, but also access to funds, it makes it more difficult for them to fund the war. That is part of it. And the last objective is to continue to make it clear that this is a strategic blunder, their decision to invade Ukraine, and one that will make President Putin a pariah in the world. So those are why and what we are hoping to achieve.
Can I ask one follow-up? Yeah. Is there anything being done in terms of either monitoring or actually just, I guess, monitoring to take a look at the effects of sanctions on ordinary Russians or anything that the administration is thinking to just deal with that population of people who are being affected?
The Russian people,
yes,
you mean? Certainly we are looking at how this is impacting the Russian economy writ large, and it is certainly as inflation is going up and as the economy is contracting, that means prices will go up, and we do know there will be a broad impact. That is the fault of President Putin and the fault of President Putin invading a sovereign country. So it is important also for the Russian people to know and understand that, and we have been working through a range of means to communicate about the realities of the war and the facts of the war through Telegram, through YouTube, through a range of channels as well. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. General Milley earlier this week talked about the possibility of building permanent U.S. bases on NATO's eastern flank. I wonder with what seriousness the White House has given that, or as you look long-term at the war in Ukraine, whether shoring up the eastern flank with permanent bases is something that's been considered.
There'll continue to be a range of discussions, but I have nothing beyond what General Milley said.
Can I ask one more question? I wanted to go a little deeper on the French elections.
Sure.
Does the White House worry that the election of Le Pen could, destabilize the NATO alliance or make it difficult, being that she's, come out with pro-Russian statements?
Well, I'm just not going to get ahead of an election in a foreign country, and obviously we will watch it closely, and I'm sure we'll have more to speak to once the results are concluded. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. What can you tell us about the multiple Secret Service agents who have been suspended or removed from the president, vice president and First Lady's detail pending this investigation of two men impersonating officers of law enforcement?
Not much from here. I can point you to the Secret Service, and obviously the FBI is overseeing the investigation.
Is there a broader concern in the administration that these principals, is there concern that they're not being protected effectively? Can you speak at all to that, or?
As I said yesterday, the president remains confident in the leader of the Secret Service, and beyond that, I would point you to the Secret Service and to the FBI.
And then I guess just on the invitations you issued to Republicans who voted to confirm Justice Jackson. I know one of them has COVID, but did you hear from the other two, Senator Murkowski and Romney? I know the president went a little further to talk about Senator Romney's father today at his speech. Did the White House hear from the Republicans who were invited today? Why didn't they come?
I would point you to their offices to speak to that. I mean, it doesn't change the president's gratitude to them for bucking the trend in their party of not supporting an eminently qualified nominee, and they did that, and it was something he wanted to call out today and express his gratitude. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. I'm wondering what the White House's reaction is to yesterday's UN vote to suspend Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. The fact that there were 58 nations that abstained from taking a vote, and then on top of the other 24 nations that voted against it. Although there was, more, obviously the majority of countries did vote to suspend Russia. Do you think that this, that many abstentions, that many people sitting on the sidelines of this shows that the entire world really isn't unified around condemning these actions by Russia?
Well, a win required 2/3 present and voting, and that is exactly what happened, and far beyond that. And we know that there were abstentions, and only 24 countries, including North Korea, voted with Russia. But the outcome, which is what is most important to us, is what we wanted, which is Russia has been suspended from the UN Human Rights Council. Suspension, just so everybody knows, somebody asked me this question the other day, but is the only method provided for in the UN resolution that established the Human Rights Council back in 2005. It's the most serious action available. It's only been applied once in history. This is only the second time in history that a country has been kicked out of the UN Human Rights Council. The last example was Libya. So that obviously speaks to the significance. And it also speaks to the fact that the 2/3, more than 2/3 of countries who are members believe that they should not have a leadership role on global human rights as they work to subvert and violate global human rights. This also means that once suspended, Russia will not be able to vote against future actions during subsequent Human Rights Council sessions. And so to us it is significant, only the second time in history, and it speaks to the global outrage in response to these atrocities.
But are there any concerns that nearly 60 nations decided not to weigh in on this matter?
Again, our focus is on the fact that it was a win. For only the second time in history was a country suspended from the UN Human Rights Council.
Another question. Does President Biden still intend to attend the White House Correspondents Association dinner here later this month in a couple weeks?
We haven't announced his plans to attend or anything about his schedule, so I don't have any update on that today.
All right.
Go ahead, Karen.
Jen, just some follow-ups to things that came up.
Sure.
To follow up on Peter's question about the testing cadence, you guys have told us about negative tests on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Should we expect that the president would get tested on Sunday, 2 days later?
I would say I don't have a prediction of that. His doctor makes an assessment of when he should be tested and how often and what the cadence should be. It's not always exactly the same, and but we will provide information to you when he tests negative.
Okay.
Or either way, of course, yes.
And to follow up on Katie's question, did the president talk to any of the senators, Romney, Murkowski, and Collins, after their vote yesterday on Ketanji Brown?
I don't have any update on that from here.
Okay, and when he said he hoped he didn't get them in trouble today, when he referenced them, what did he mean by that?
I think he meant he recognizes that the vast majority of the other members of their party voted a different way. Go ahead.
Thank you. On India, next week, Secretary of State Blinken and Defense Secretary are hosting their Indian counterparts, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, for the first India-US 2+2 dialogue under this administration. What is President's message to the meeting? What is expectations? Is he sending any concrete ideas to this meeting as well?
President Biden believes our partnership with India is one of the most important relationships we have in the world. As you know, he met with Prime Minister Modi and other Quad leaders in March. He expects that at this 2+2, Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin will continue driving forward our work with India and our shared goals in the Indo-Pacific region and around the world. We also believe both sides will continue our close consultations on the consequences of President Putin's brutal war against Ukraine and mitigating the impact by addressing energy and food prices. Obviously, it could cover a range of topics, so we expect that to be a central one.
And secondly, given the U.S. frustrating experience it is having in the UN Security Council, where one country is coming out and vetoing all the issues related to Ukraine, what is President's thoughts on the reforms in the UN Security Council itself?
Well, I know a question has been asked about whether Russia could be kicked out of being a permanent member. We don't anticipate that happening. But obviously the step taken yesterday to suspend Russia from the UN Human Rights Council is an indication of the global response and horror at the atrocities we've seen happen on the ground in Ukraine. But beyond that, I don't have any other predictions of reforms.
Should there be individual veto or group veto inside the Security Council?
Again, I understand your questions, but I don't have any predictions or calls for that at this point in time. Go ahead, Francesca. Okay, we'll just do a few more. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Since his State of the Union address, the president has only made a handful of domestic trips. We've talked in here before about how he'd like to get back into the community and have a chance to interact with the American people. Is the current COVID wave getting in the way of his travel plans?
No, I expect he's going to travel a bunch in the next few weeks.
Okay, and you had mentioned that you will be going to North Carolina, and you didn't have too much more to add on that. But might the president, while he's in Greensboro, be visiting one of the area's two historically black colleges and universities?
I don't have more details at this point in time. As they get finalized, I'm sure we'll share them with all of you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. I have a two-part question on student loans.
Yep.
Last year, President Biden directed the Department of Education to create a report on whether he has presidential authority to unilaterally do a broad cancellation of debt. I don't believe that's ever been made public, and as you're looking at loan extensions or loan pause extensions, can we anticipate seeing a release of that report? And secondly, as you've talked about how the president wants to lower costs for Americans. Borrowers have expressed stress, anxiety about these short-term extensions. What's your message to them?
I think our message to them is that not a single person has paid a dime on their student loans since the president took office. And he's continued to evaluate and assess with the Department of Education and other policymakers in the administration what the needs are to lower costs for people, including people who have student loans and do feel stressed, even as the economy is continuing to recover, but as we see costs too high in some areas. On the first question, I don't have any update on that. I would tell you that if Congress were to send him a bill to cancel his $10,000 in student loans, in student debt, he'd be happy to sign it. Go ahead. Last one. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, Rachel Wallace, who was the general counsel of the Science Office, who the White House found had been bullied by Dr. Lander, has been told that she will not be getting her job back as general counsel. Why?
I'm not aware of this personnel update. I'd have to check on it. I'm happy to do that, and we will get you back a comment.
Right. Then a follow-up. Yesterday you said, when asked about Vice President Harris's and the mask at the Senate, you said that she would follow CDC protocols at the event today. CDC protocols clearly say you should be wearing a mask. Doesn't distinguish between outside and inside. So why didn't she wear a mask?
And she was socially distanced for the vast majority of the event today.
She was standing next to the president.
About 6 feet away. Thanks, everyone.
Secret Service guy.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, folks. So as you guys can see, they make their own rules. They don't even follow CDC guidelines. She says that that person was 6 feet away when it's not true. They were shoulder to shoulder right next to each other. Not only that, friggin' Nancy Pelosi was there smooching with Biden the day before yesterday and talking to Biden face to face. So it's stupid that they continue to say that there was no close contact to the guy. But let's see what happens. As you guys probably know, you guys saw yesterday, we did a afternoon news podcast yesterday afternoon. We're going to do one today, so make sure you guys stay tuned. It starts at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, so if you guys want to join us for that. there is going to be a Pentagon press briefing starting in just a few moments. So if you guys want to join us for that, it should start on the channel right now. Thank you so much, folks, and we hope to see you there. Have a blessed rest of your day. God bless every single one of you guys that join us here at Golden State Times. And I hope that you guys join us for both the podcast coming at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, and also for